Emil Durkheim's work was focused on his concern of social solidarity or societal cohesion. For example, how exactly do societies form social solidarity? Durkheim was so concerned with social solidarity because he believed it provided the sources for a society's morality, and a society's morality could be found in its collective consciousness. In his book, The Division of Labor and Society, he outlined his concept that solidarity had changed after the Industrial Revolution. Because the transition of social life from pre-modern times to the era of modern neoliberal laissez-faire capitalism entitled fundamental changes, clearly changes in social solidarity would also occur. He sought, like Marx and Weber, to describe the shift in human society from pre-modern to modern. It's also worth noting that Durkheim was a functionalist, and functionalism stresses that human behavior is governed by relatively stable social structures. Social structures are based mainly on shared values or preferences, and most societal issues can be resolved through reform. For Durkheim, early societies were held together by a mechanical or sort of automatic solidarity, union based on likeness or similarity of people. It was mechanical in the fact that it was automatic without thinking. During the time of mechanical solidarity, a collective consciousness was much easier to maintain because of how people were, how similar they were. Through similar work in educational and religious training, social integration was paramount for survival and function. Modern society is defined by an organic solidarity because of the increased division of labor. Because labor is so divided and specialized, individuals in some groups are no longer self-sufficient, but they must cooperate and depend on one another for survival. It's helpful to think of organic solidarity as something that needs to be cultivated as opposed to something that occurs naturally. For Durkheim, this form of solidarity is organic because it portrays modern society as similar in key ways to an advanced biological organism, a quote, system of different organs, each of which has a special role and which are themselves forms of differentiated parts. Given the situation of Western society, it is difficult to maintain solidarity through a collective consciousness because personal consciousnesses increasingly come to dictate people's own personal behavior. Durkheim did not grieve this transition or loss of mechanical solidarity. In fact, he believed that the similarity between people could actually create a greater solidarity and was just a symptom of modernization. However, it wouldn't be true to say that Durkheim was overly optimistic either. Durkheim believed that modern society experienced pathological rates of egoistic and anomic suicides because we lack integration and regulation. We don't have social solidarity. And suicide and class conflicts as social problems could be solved by instilling a collective sense of morality in individuals. Durkheim believed that whenever the division of labor failed to reinforce the ties that bind us, this would occur. Durkheim said that labor turned the individual worker into a piece of machinery, much like Marx. For Durkheim, the increasingly concentrated wealth in the hands of the few only exacerbated the divisions between owners and workers, and made it even more difficult to build a system based on mutual respect, trust, and moral regulation. The difference between Durkheim and Marx is that Durkheim believes this class polarization is anomic and can be adjusted, and is not necessarily inherent to capitalist labor divisions. And revolution isn't necessarily part and parcel for a better society. He believed that there could be a normal division of labor and where individuals find their appropriate places in society, satisfying their own needs and desires. However, under the forced division and anomic division of labor that we arguably find ourselves in today, people in positions of power act in self-interest, and they implement rules and engage in practices that protect their own favored positions. The situation we find ourselves in creates an imperfect and troubled solidarity and is threatened by strain and collapse. While this doesn't mean he advocated for total equality, after all, he did say that not all of us will have equally important parts to play, but such equality is not necessary as long as each person has a sense of obligation and contribution. They feel like they're contributing to something greater than themselves. For Durkheim, problems like class conflict and the abuse of power are really just symptoms of more basic ailments. Class conflict and abuse of power is caused by insufficient morality and solidarity. Serious problems of inequality can be eliminated or at least reduced without such radical actions as full-scale revolution or the utter destruction of capitalism. In many ways, Durkheim is optimistic about the society of the future. Social solidarity based on morality and justice can be accomplished if capitalist division of labor does not become morally unjustifiable. It's also important to note that he believed in various kinds of social welfare. The state should initiate policies that promote equality. In his mind, if you abolish the inheritance of wealth and property at birth, you would create a huge step towards the just distribution of social goods, because just distribution could not occur as long as there are rich and poor at birth. For Durkheim, humanity is not inherently evil, but does require some sort of moral regulation to keep our egoistic desires in check. Where does that morality come from with the decline of religious institutions? And how do we create a social consciousness that is geared toward true social justice? It's still a question we must ask ourselves.